All right, so I'm going to try to explain in a little bit of a greater detail the combustion reactions that I had mentioned in one of the earlier videos. So the reason why, in my opinion, combustion reactions are the easiest of the 5 reactions we'll be discussing is because 3 out of the 4 things will always be the same. You will always have oxygen as one of your reactants, and for your products, you'll always have water and CO2. So the only thing that will change for combustion reactions is the fuel source. And obviously the coefficients, because you'll have to balance the equation, but that's pretty much it. So I have a balanced combustion reaction right here. I have the balanced combustion reaction of methane gas. So we see, again, oxygen is one reactant, and we see that CO2 and water are always the products. So what changed? The fuel source. Now methane has the formula CH4. And if we were to double check, and this is good review for balancing chemical reactions that we discuss, this is a balanced chemical equation. So let's just do the review, right? So first we would do metals. There are no metals, so we skip to nonmetals. We see on the reactant side there's one carbon, so we have a carbon and CO2 on the product side, so we leave that alone. So I would save hydrogen and oxygen for last. Seeing that I have oxygen as a diatomic, that will be last. So I first go to hydrogens, and I have 4 hydrogens in CH4. I go over here, H2 only gives me 2, so 2 times 2 gives me the 4 hydrogens on this side. So last I would need is to balance my oxygen. Well, I have 2 oxygen and CO2, and then from the 2 water molecules, I have another 2. So 2 plus 2 equals 4, and what number times 2 in the diatomic will give me 4, and that's the coefficient of 2. So this is a perfect example of a balanced combustion reaction. So you want to get comfortable balancing combustion reactions for yourself. So here we have the combustion of glucose. Now, a lot of you may have already taken biology, and in biology they talk about cellular respiration. And cellular respiration requires converting glucose into energy, ATP. And you may have even memorized that reaction for biology and its coefficients. Well, now we don't need to memorize it because we're in chemistry, and that's one advantage. We can figure out this combustion reaction. So how do we know? Well, what's the fuel source? Our fuel source is glucose. So we could go ahead and write C6H12O6. And we don't need to do the phases, but if you wanted to, let's say it's a solid, okay? Now, what do we know? As a fuel source, right, one of the reactants for combustion to occur, what supports combustion? It's oxygen. So oxygen gas is always one of the reactants. And then we already said 3 of the 4 are always the same. What are the 2 products? CO2 and water. And I know water at room temperature is a liquid, but we'll put gas here because combustion reactions are exothermic. They release a lot of heat, so typically the water vaporizes. In cellular respiration, the water is also a vapor as we exhale in breathing and releasing the CO2 gas. So now what do we want to do? Well, we got to balance. So first metals, no metals. Then we go to nonmetals. I have 6 carbon in the glucose. I only have 1 in CO2, so I put a coefficient of 6 there. Now my carbons are balanced. So I have hydrogen and oxygen. Who am I going to save for last? The diatomic. So I go to my hydrogens. I have 12 hydrogens in glucose, right? I go over here on the product side. Water only has 2. So 2 times what number is 12? 6. Now my hydrogens are balanced. So who's next? The oxygens. So on my product side, I have 6 times 2 oxygen, because CO2. I have 12 oxygen from the CO2. plus 6 times the 1 in H2O, because there's only one oxygen per H2O, that's another 6. I have a total of 18 oxygen. So I need 18 oxygen on my reactant side. Here's a trick. Of the 18, I already have 6 in glucose. So 6 plus what number equals 18? Well, that's easy. I need 12 more. Well, how do I get the 12 more when I have 2 from oxygen? So 12 equals 2 times what coefficient? Oh, 6. So the coefficient of oxygen is 6. So there is my balanced combustion equation from cellular respiration. And you may have memorized this, but now you don't need to. Why? We know how to balance, and we know the important thing is in combustion, O2 is always one of the reactants to support combustion, and CO2 and H2O are the products. So, as I said before, we have 3 of the 4. Easy. I hope that helps. If you guys have any comments, go ahead and leave them in the comments section. And again, thanks for your time, and look forward to the next video.